This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
All those nights when you've got no lights, the check is in the mail, and your little angel hung the cat up by its tail, and your third fiancé didn't show. Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be
Place Nation Pop Experience went our way back to the 80s tonight on Making Mount Rushmore. How you doing? I am Andy Atherton. I'm your moderator / proxy for a panelist tonight on our latest episode. Tonight we're going to talk about 80s sitcoms and 80s TV dramas. I have a couple of guys here to break down and give their lists. So let's get them in here, and I will also mention whose list I will be reading as proxy. First off, you can hear him every Wednesday on this feed as part of the crew for It Was a Thing on TV, as well as monthly on Into the Spidey Movieverse. Chico Alexander. Chico, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it. This is a really fun show. I got it as soon as you gave us the topics. I was like, oh god, this is going to be tough. I better start preparing.
Yeah, I know. Let me pull back the curtain a little bit, break kayfabe. I have a nice big pool of panelists for this show, and there are certain topics I know are like chum in the water with some people. And I know for you and Mike and Greg, you guys are huge TV guys.
Oh, yeah.
Anything moderately TV related, I know it's going to pique at least one of your interests. I know Mike wanted to be on tonight, but just scheduling didn't work out for him. But yeah, I know certain people are big music people, and there's other people that love comics, like the last episode. So I try to lean into the strengths of the panelists to try to keep their interest up. Also, though, joining us tonight is he was one of my co-hosts on what was it? What the hell was that? PTV and Trivia. It's been so long. I've had PTSD from all the work that to that show. But you can also hear him on the PlayStation Wrestling Network as one half of Extreme Resurrection, Mr. Michael Cook. Mike, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you very much. And you know, you put out 80s, and I hit that right off the bat. I mean, that's right above the wheelhouse.
Yeah, we've also there's some people are really partial to decades. I know we got a lot of 90s kids out there. So yes, I really sometimes I it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Like I know, like, oh, I'm gonna get so and so for this episode. This one hasn't been on for a while. Let me throw a pitch their way. So also I will be doing as proxy for Shawn Kidd. Shawn Kidd cannot be on this episode again due to scheduling. But him and I'm looking at his list, and I probably would have been in the ballpark with him. So I'm going to read his as well, just to I appreciate him doing a list for tonight. So we're going to start off with Chico, and we're going to start off with 80s sitcoms. So what is the first entry in your Mount Rushmore of 80s TV sitcoms, Chico?
Well, there was one that if what I knew then I didn't know now would definitely be on the list. I'm not going to mention any names, but it did air on Thursday nights. But another thing that aired on Thursday nights got an honorable mention, at least on my list, and that was Night Court. And I'm only saying this because I know Mike Klaus can't be here, and he lives and dies off Night Court, and frankly, it got me through my first 2 years of college. The reruns on A&E. I love that show. It is, but yeah, it's on Laugh Now if you want to take a look at it. And I swear, you don't know what you're missing. Anyway, another sort of honorable mention, and it does count because it started in 1989, was Family Matters, because I grew up watching that show, and it was one of the first, if not the first, actually was not even the first, but It was one of the first TV shows with a predominantly African American cast, and they just sort of spotlighted as a regular family does. Now, again, there is a show that came before Family Matters. It did the same thing, but I personally thought that Family Matters was a little more relatable, at least from where I'm sitting. So those are my two honorable mentions. Oh, I have one more, and my sister Kisla, who I love dearly, would drive me up a tree if I did not mention this. Designing Women.
Oh, yeah.
That's Designing Women, old CBS. Some of the funniest, most real work ever to come out of the Thomasons and ever to come out of the 80s. They got some real geniuses working on that show, and real geniuses in front of the show. Dixie Carter, Delta Burke, Annie Potts, Gene Smart, of course, the late great Meshack Taylor. Really good stuff there. But now, my first entry. The absolute first entry. It has just a theme song that, really hit at that time. And if you listen to 80s on 8 at just the right time, you can actually hear the full version of the song. And this was just one of the first ensemble pieces. One of the first great ensemble pieces of the 80s. And it gave birth to a beloved character in Frasier Crane. And of course, I'm talking about the boys in Boston frequenting a bar called Cheers.
Mm-hmm. The place where everybody knows your name.
Mm-hmm.
Why did Cheers make it though?
Oh, why did Cheers make it? Oh gosh, it was just the perfect way to sort of put a cap on Thursday nights, I thought. And even if when you had like the Diane switchover from Shelley Long to Kirstie Alley's Rebecca, it just did not lose a beat. It didn't lose a beat, and there was just some of the most inspired writing, some of the funniest cast members, some of the most genius actors and actresses behind the cast members. They basically made that show. I mean, this was just a true ensemble piece. I mean, you had Sam, the guy who's just trying to keep it all together. You had Diane or Rebecca, the intellectual who's wondering what on earth she's doing there. You have the trivia-loving Cliff Clavin, obviously. You have the perennially alcoholic Norm. Mm-hmm. And then you have the wisecracking barkeep in Carla. And it's just a whole lot of things that just work together, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes you just hit lightning in a bottle. They played off each other so much, and they personified what like a crew of bar regulars. As somebody who worked in bars for a lot of years after college, and during college, it was atypical. You had your bar know-it-all. You had your guy that always sat or stood in the same spot. You had your dim-witted. You had your waitress or bartender that always thought they were too good to be there. Yeah, it was definitely just such great actors, great writing. So sad when we lost the coach, but Woody Harrelson really, brought
he slid right in.
Yeah, fit right in and brought like a youthfulness to the show. Mike, you had Cheers as well on your list.
Now when Cheers first came out, I mean I didn't watch it.
Nobody did.
And it'd be one of those things that if it was on, okay, maybe I caught the end of it. I mean, but I'll tell you, as the show clicked on, and I wish we had the option, thinking about it, I wish we had the option to be able to go back and watch it then. I probably picked up on it right after Coach died, but I absolutely loved it. The chemistry between Sam and Diane were fabulous. I mean Carla and everybody. Yeah, you guys said it all. I mean, it's just a great ensemble cast, from top to bottom, and the show picked up steam even in its waning years. It still was great. I mean, what other show can have like character like Fraser Crane and Lilith, and be two of the funniest people on the show? And it was just a fabulous show. And have you guys been to the bar up there?
Can't say I have. No.
Neither have I. No.
No, it really. I mean, it's exactly what you walk in, and it's always busy, and it's a great place, and they have all the memorabilia up and everything.
Yeah, I mean, Cliff Clavin, the character, was created right on the spot. I mean, John Ratzenberger auditioned for Norm and didn't get it, and he while he's there, he's like, "Do you have a bar know-it-all? Somebody that knows everything?" And he's like, I always thought you should have a lot of keys, because guys who carry a lot of keys have a lot of stories, a lot of things to say. So, yeah, it was just, I mean, Coach, the quotes from Coach and the scenes, like, is the phone ring? Is there an Ernie Pantuso here? That's you, Coach. Oh, speaking. The Norm, every episode, what's going on, Mr. Pearson? Let's talk about what's going down, Mr. Pearson. What are you up to? My ideal weight if I was 12 feet tall. Those kind of, it was just so great. Sean had it as an honorable mention, but I definitely would have put it on had I done my own list proper.
And they had so many guest stars too that would just pop in and out.
I mean, they killed off somebody he got killed by a Zamboni, for crying out loud.
Yeah, Jay Thomas when
Eddie LeBeck,
when he had a contract dispute. So they killed him.
Yeah, I can't hear the Magnificent Seven theme without thinking of Cheers. I really can't. All right, so Mike, give us another entry on your list.
Well, since Chico started with a couple honorable mentions, I'll give a couple. I mean, I had Night Court on mine. Another great ensemble cast. That one I watched from beginning to end, and unfortunately, we just lost Marky Post, from that show. But her interactions with John Larroquette were perfect. And he talked about Family Matters. Well, that was a spinoff to one of my favorite shows, Perfect Strangers. I mean, who didn't do the Dance of Joy? Balky Bartakamus from Mipos. And, talking about, predominantly black family, even though it started in the 70s, you have the Jeffersons, and watching the live show that they just recently did on ABC reminded me on how good that show was. But for my pick, for one of the Mount Rushmores, and I am going to go with it because it did change Thursday night TV forever. It basically, it changed NBC. Like, NBC was bottom of the barrel, ratings wise, until the Cosby Show hit. Now let's forget everything we know that recently that has happened. I mean, anyone our age watch that show. Everything about it was great. And, from the kids, from the chemistry between Felicia Rashad and, the man we will not name, what was great. They're, every so often, every season, they'd have like a lip sync thing, which was always great. And even when Raven-Symoné came on the show, where most shows die, or start to fall off once a kid is introduced, it didn't. It was just funny as ever. So that is probably my number one pick, just because it changed NBC forever, changed Thursday nights.
Yeah, it did. Sean had it as well. I would have put it as well. I try to separate the art from the artist as much as I can. Just looking at it, as a show, it was again another in my career, another show I worked on when I worked for Viacom. I had to cut it for Nick at Night. I had to have 80 episodes ready for the first week because it was a marathon. And no, it was just so good. Yeah, it wasn't. I can understand where Chico says it wasn't as relatable as Family Matters was to some people, but the dynamic was so good, and it wasn't just him. That's why the show makes it on a Mount Rushmore, just because of the greatness of Felicia Rashad and Malcolm Jamal Warner, Lisa Bonet, Tempest Bledsoe. I'm trying to remember who played Rudy now, off the top of my head. Keisha Knight Pullman. Such great episode, and they were really the best parts of the episodes because it was centered around them, and they're playing off of him. We're here to say goodbye to Lamont the goldfish, or the episode where Rudy and Peter, who one of the best minor characters ever in sitcoms, they mess with the juicer, and there's grape juice going everywhere. And Peter's goes home and stands in a laundry basket to hide. Yeah, those lip sync episodes were great, and it was a fun show. Hindsight, yes, thinking about things and stuff, but in the vacuum, it's a great series. All right, Mike, why don't you give we're back to Chico. Chico, give us another entry on your list.
Another entry on my list. You actually mentioned it, Mike. It was, you said you were talking about Family Matters being a spinoff of Perfect Strangers. I thought Perfect Strangers was another entry on my list because it was basically a snapshot of America at that time. You have this Midwest, this rough, tough, in his own mind, Midwesterner striking out on his own, and who does he find? An immigrant. And you know me, immigrants make America great. That's my thing. And nowhere was this more true than in the 1980s, where you had sort of the kind of globalist thinking coming into the American conscience with the influx of immigrants, the sort of let's restore Ellis Island to its former glory movement. And no one embodied this more than Balky, as played by Bronson Pinchot. And he's just this incredible character actor. You put anything in front of him, he will deliver. And I think he delivered 5 or 10 different characters when he was on Perfect Strangers. And he plays this perfect foil to this everyman, Larry Appleton, played by Mark Lynn Baker, who has a really, really high-pitched opinion of himself. And ultimately it's a happy ending for everybody. And honestly, who can forget the Dance of Joy?
Yes. It was, yeah. I was so happy, Cousin Larry. We do Dance of Joy. But one of my favorites. It's been a long time since I've rewatched Perfect Strangers. Ernie Sabella is one of my favorite character actors of all time.
The first 2 seasons, yeah.
Mr. Twinkasetti. And the way he would just refer to Balky as the turnip. Oh, my God. So funny. Yeah, it's really a great show back in its day. And it was one of the first TGIF shows, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was one of the first TGIF shows, yeah.
All right, very good. That did not make Sean's list, but I could definitely see where it makes a Mount Rushmore. All right, Mike. Actually, I skipped over Sean before, so let me give one of Sean's that is not on anybody's list. He put Taxi on his, and I can tell you that is a great show. It's a show that I did not watch growing up because I just didn't get it at the time. But then you go back and you watch again. You talk about Cheers being such a great ensemble. Taxi. You had Danny DeVito as Louis De Palma. Tony Danza as Tony. You had Judd Hirsch as Alex Riegert, Jeff Conway as I think it's Andy, I think his name was, and of course you had was Andy Kaufman as Latka Gravis, plus the great Christopher Lloyd as Jim Ignatowski. Yeah, that's something that I don't know. It was just over my head as a kid, but now I go back and I watch some of those shows. And the one episode where Jim has to retake his driver's license because he didn't renew it or something like that, and he's trying to take the test and he's cheating, and he doesn't know a question, and he's trying to ask Jeff Conway and Alex Riegert. He's trying to ask him a question, and he's like whispering, "What do you do at a yellow light? Slow down. What do you do at a yellow light? Slow down. What do you do?" I mean, it is got one of the. I mean, I wish I could write something that funny. It is so good, and it deserves. I mean, it would have been probably an honorable mention for me, just because. But Chico, you have any thoughts on Taxi?
Oh man, I am a little when it comes to. I feel like I'm a little because I only remember vaguely seeing Taxi as a kid, and I never got it. I mean, the only thing I got, even in reruns, was the appeal of Latka Gravis, who was
and Simca too, the great Carol Kane as his wife.
Yep.
Yep. Mike, you have any thoughts on Taxi?
See, I was a little young for Taxi, and I never really got into it. But like you said, a great ensemble cast, and that one scene is played in like any type of like when they show any highlights and stuff. That's always one scene that comes out, or TV's funniest moments.
Yeah.
And that's one that just stands out. It's hilarious.
Yeah. All right, Mike. So give us another entry on your list.
Well, Cheers was on my list, and I had The Cosby Show. Next is the greatest father of all time, Al Bundy. Married with Children. I mean, it definitely was a show that was the kept Fox alive, at that time. It was their number one show, and besides Cops or whatever, but it was so ahead of its time. Sponsors were dropping out left and right, and they didn't care. They kept it up. I mean, they had the Parent Teachers Council, they had rights groups, everyone going after the show. I mean, could this show be shown on network TV today? Hell no. But for the early or late 80s, early 90s, you have Al Bundy and his group of MAM. They were great. Even going from switching, when Jefferson Darcy became part of the show, and it was just, it didn't skip a beat. The one-liners were endless. Kelly Bundy was, everybody loved Kelly Bundy at our age.
True.
You can't even repeat half the stuff today on TV that was going through that. But to me, at our age, it definitely holds up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sean had on his list. Might have made my list. Yeah. Just a lot of people back then like to call Roseanne the anti-Cosby Show. This was actually the anti-Cosby Show. This is, a guy who down deep he loved his family, but never really showed it. And yeah, they never got along. But they were not that they never got along. They were Bundys. They had their own way of getting along. I mean, they had the family Playboys. You had, I would go back, if you're going to point to a couple of signature episodes, watch It's a Wonderful Life, where with Sam Kinison as Al Bundy's guardian angel.
That was just a classic episode right there.
Yeah, that one, and also the other one where Santa, a drunk Santa skydives and lands on their fence, and Al's got to go out there and play Santa for the local kids. That's another funny episode. Yeah, just the back and forth between Peg and Al, and then you had Bud and Steve. Yeah, Steve and Jefferson were definitely two different characters. Amanda Burse as Marcy, the nosy neighbor. The entire run, they did try the kid thing, didn't work out. Buck the dog was always great, and
Seven was his name, and he just disappeared, and they never talked about him again.
He pulled a Chuck Cunningham. He just there was no mention of him ever.
Him and Seven.
Yeah, and they amazingly Ted McGinley didn't kill the show because he was the I don't know if you guys have ever gone.
He is the patron saint. He is the patron saint of shark jumping.
That's what I was about to say. He's the patron saint of JumpTheShark.com. So anytime he was added to a show, Happy Days, The Love Boat, they all pretty much called it quits right after that. But yeah, definitely a good pick there. Any other thoughts to share, Chico?
You know what? Married with Children. Growing up, I didn't get it. Now that I'm an adult, I do get it. Yeah, I mean, here's this crazy ass family, and they put the fun in dysfunctional, I guess you could say.
What other show could have King Kong Bundy as a relative?
That's true.
And every and don't forget, every season they would have that Memorial Day or Labor Day cook-off where he always talked about 4 touchdowns for Polk High.
Yeah.
Is there any moment where he doesn't talk about the time he scored 4 touchdowns in a single game for Polk High?
All right. So, Chico, why don't you give us another entry on your list?
All right, another entry on my list would actually be 4 ladies that you would spend your Saturday nights with. And they had just the most impeccable charm and the most impeccable chemistry. And in the 16th episode of the series, they went hard and addressed the death of a dirty dog cheater husband. I am talking about the Golden Girls.
Yep.
B. Arthur, comic genius. Betty White, comic genius. Estelle Getty, comic god. Rue McClanahan, comic genius. Put them together, gold.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it was magic. So good, and has grown in appreciation.
Oh, definitely.
In time.
Not many sitcoms from the 80s grow in appreciation and stand the test of time. I mean, usually you put on something from the 80s, it's so dated. I mean, Different Strokes, which I grew up worshiping. I mean, that was just, the world stopped when we all watched Different Strokes. But you put it on TV today, you can tell the dated 80s references.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, nothing against Different Strokes. I love it, but yeah, compared to Golden Girls, it's just dated. Whereas the Golden Girls is timeless.
Yeah, because they were just so great, and because they typified, funny old ladies living in Miami. I mean, picture in Sicily. Yeah, I mean, I got luckily enough to when they used to have the tour at the Disney Studios in Florida. You went down the street and you saw the Golden Girl exterior. So, yeah. I mean, it's so fun, and thank God that Betty White and Rue McClanahan had the genius to not play the characters they were originally intended for.
I know. But remember when Rue McClanahan was supposed to be the ditz, Betty White was supposed to be the vamp.
Yeah, but they had played similar characters in their previous shows on, I believe it was Maude and the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and they said, no, we want to do something different. And Yeah, I as great as Rue McClanahan is, I could not picture her telling those St. Olaf stories. I'm sorry.
I couldn't do that either.
Yeah.
I really can't. Especially not after seeing, seasons 1 and 2 of Mama's Family.
Oh, yeah.
That just seems really out of character.
Mm-hmm. All right. Mike, it made your list as well.
Yeah, I mean, everything you guys said. I mean, who ever heard of St. Olaf before that show? And it's something that to this day I'm still wondering. You ever notice there's only 3 chairs in the kitchen? But yeah, it was a great show. They even tackled some controversial topics. And one of the biggest ones in recent events over the last few years, and they've played this clip quite a bit, is when they tackled about the Confederate flag. And for a sitcom like that, that wasn't a family sitcom where, the family sitcoms always played, always did the serious moment, like almost like the after school special type thing.
Yeah, a very special episode.
Yeah, this show never did that until that one moment, and they still found a way to make it funny, yet bring it home when they talked about the Confederate flag, and Rue McClanahan finally like, well, Blanche, she was like, well, maybe it's not all that. But the show just still lives on. I mean, who knows? I mean, they have board games now. I mean, their shirts are everywhere. I don't know how it happened, but it's just lived on, and great show. I mean, maybe it's because of everything that Betty White's done over the last 10 years. All the movies she's been in and all that, and I think
the fact that she's still alive.
Yeah, but
you know what it is? It's relatable. You want to know why? Because everybody has a grandma like that, or an aunt like that, or everybody knows an older lady like one of the 4 of them. Oh, everybody does. My grandma Dottie was like, she was a Jewish Sophia. That's what she was like. I mean, she would tell all these stories. She would swear. She would talk about things that I didn't really want to know about with me. But
did she ever bring up the old country?
Yeah. Well, yeah, the Bronx. That was the old country. My grandmother.
Picture it, the Bronx.
Picture it, the Bronx. She just, I believe you, that's a whole other podcast. And I'm laying on my couch, not sitting on my couch talking about that. But yeah, it's a funny show. I mean, I briefly did stand up when I was in college, and I used to joke about the Golden Girls, being like, I used to say it was the grossest show on television, because they would talk about, as old ladies living in Miami talking about, like, having sex. And it's like, picture your grandmother. No, it's not funny. That's gross. Oh God, no. So, but they were sweet. They were funny, and they played off each other so much. We could all hope to have, like, be old and be with friends like that when we're those ladies' ages. All right, so I'm going to read one off Sean's list since Mike is done with his list proper. Sean went with Three's Company. I consider Three's Company more of a 70s sitcom, but it did go into the 80s. The late great John Ritter as Jack Tripper. You had Joyce DeWitt and Suzanne Summers as his 2 roommates. The Furleys were great, and even when they were replaced by the Ropers, and then they were replaced by Mr. Furley, had that comic foil that played off of them. It was Three's Company was a great show. It was very again, another dated show. I think you try to watch that now, it doesn't really. I don't think it really aged that well, but still a very, very funny show. Chico, any thoughts on Three's Company?
Yeah, I'm like you. I thought of it more as a 70s show. If it were more of an 80s show than a 70s show, I definitely would have put it in the 80s Mount Rushmore. But it's more of a 70s show to me. Yeah. But even so, it is classic. It is absolutely classic. Mm-hmm. And the whole castmates, and again, we're playing musical blondes here, but it just seems like everybody had chemistry with everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, even when they replaced, Suzanne Summers with Priscilla Barnes, and then then we had Jane Lee Harrison, and then
Like I said, musical blondes. Yeah.
and you had Larry. I'm trying to remember the actor's name.
Richard Klein. Richard Klein was Larry.
Yes. He was the Jack's the devil on Jack's shoulder, basically whispering in his ear, trying to get him into trouble. Mike, any thoughts on Three's Company?
You guys mentioned Three's Company. I can't believe I forgot about that show. Another one of those shows that I watched every episode growing up, like all on syndication, of course. But I loved the show. It was one of those shows that every single episode was based on a misunderstanding.
Yes.
And I'm one of the few. I actually liked it better with Don Knotts.
Yeah.
Everybody. Well, there is one in everybody. What can I say?
Yeah. I mean, I'm split. I mean, I love the Ropers. I love Furley. So I'm good either way.
Yeah. But just hearing that reminded me of, like, for whatever reason, Three's Company and Too Close for Comfort, another 80s show. I didn't think it was great, and it didn't make an honorable mention for me, but just for whatever reason, I always remember those two always being on together on syndication, wherever.
Yep. Gave us Jim J. Bullock. Come on. No, but I remember there was an episode of Friends where something was going on. There was a misunderstanding, and I think it was Chandler and Monica or something. And Chandler says, "What would Jack and Chrissy do?" Like something like that. It was a nice callback to Three's Company on there, because it was literally like out of a Three's Company episode. All right, so Chico, let's finish off your list.
All right. So the fourth, this was like the hardest one to fill in, but it did feature again another ensemble cast. It did kind of go south in the last season, but it was just it was just endearing. It was just absolutely endearing, and in its early years, it was like a prime example of seeing what's wrong and then making it right. It was the show that was spun off from Different Strokes. I thought of The Facts of Life for my fourth sitcom in the 80s TV sitcom Mount Rushmore. Charlotte Ray's absolutely darling, and the four girls too: Lisa Whelchel, Nancy McKeon, Mindy Cohn, Kim Fields. I have no idea what she's doing nowadays. It just boggles the mind there. But they have this like instant chemistry with each other, and it just makes the show even more solid, to the point where when Charlotte Ray left and they brought in Cloris Leachman and Mackenzie Aston and some more new characters, it just changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they brought in some unknown actor named George Clooney at the time.
Yeah, I have no idea what he's doing either.
Yeah, he amounted to nothing. Kim Fields showed up on an episode of Cobra Kai, I think in season 1, as a character's mom. So that's the only thing I've seen her in now in the last many years. But yeah, no, you take the good, you take the bad, take them both there. You have the Facts of Life. I could definitely see that making a Mount Rushmore. It wouldn't have made mine, but it was definitely a great spinoff that at times probably surpassed. I mean, again, you're talking about 4 actresses with great chemistry. You mentioned all their names; they were tremendous. I did watch it as it growing up, and I had a crush on Cindy in the first season. But I'm glad they retooled it and kind of brought the focus a little closer in on it. And I'm glad though that those was it Nancy, Cindy, and who was the other one? Mary
Molly.
Jo. They Molly they didn't bring back, but it was the other one who was the other lead alpha female with Blair. What was her name? Oh Christ, I don't remember. Anyway,
Joe.
What?
Joe?
No, not Joe. It was she was only in the first season, so it doesn't matter. But no, it was a great show. Mike, any thoughts on Facts of Life?
Oh, I watched the show too. I mean, because it was Different Strokes was the lead in, and coincidentally, because it was also the spinoff, I had a huge crush on Kim Fields, on Tootsie from when she was on Different Strokes. Did those few guest appearances, but the show completely changed. I agree that after that first season, and it's probably the next 6 seasons, with that cast, that's what made it good. It didn't make my honorable mention, but I did think about it. But I just, it fell down to me. It just fell hard after that. After they started, after Charlotte Rae left, yeah, it was just not the same.
Yep. All right. So we'll go with honorable mentions. The only one that Sean had that wasn't, I had two actually, two family sitcoms, Family Ties and Growing Pains. Both great shows, great ensembles. Had very special episodes. Definitely see Michael J. Fox as Alex P. Keaton, and he was a typical. I mean, you want to talk about a show that is a snapshot of the '80s. You look at that. I mean, Ronald Reagan loving, Richard Nixon loving, a kid that wants to just make money, and then they revitalize it a little bit as the kids get older. They introduce Andy in the show. The parents were former Flower Children, and then you had Growing Pains with Hachi Machi Joanna Kearns. It was a great dynamic on that show, and it was those were you look up family sitcoms or family shows all time. Those two would definitely be up there. Chico, any honorable mentions that weren't talked about yet?
Well, one that just came to my mind as soon as we were doing this. Yes, it was incredibly hokey and incredibly unbelievable, and from my understanding, just really the logistics behind it were just absolutely nuts. Alf.
Oh.
Yes.
Can't believe nobody was talking about Alf.
Oh, I love Alf. Oh God, when they put on Nick at Night, I remember just getting a 6-pack of beer and just sitting on my couch just watching Alf all night. Oh, so good. It was short-lived. As much as I love it, I don't think it would have made my Mount Rushmore. Definitely worth a mention. But yeah, it sounds like it was nuts between the having the puppet and having the the man in the costume. It was probably a lot of nuts nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
Mike, any other shows we haven't talked about?
We briefly mentioned it. Mama's Family, another great ensemble cast. From spun off from the Carol Burnett show. I had Different Strokes, and one that I wasn't too familiar with, but from what my grandmother, who loved it, and actually my parents loved it, Newhart. And even though I don't know much about it, I mean, I watched a little bit. This is Larry. I'm Larry, and my other brother Daryl. But from what I was told, it was so good. And then the ending of the ending, my grandmother said was the best ending of any sitcom. I guess it was a callback to Newhart's 70s show.
The greatest series finale of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Basically, his character Dick Loudon gets hit in the head with a golf ball, and he goes unconscious, and he wakes up as Bob. Oh God, I forgot what his last name was, but wakes up in the Bob.
He wakes up in as his character from the Bob Newhart show.
Yes.
It wasn't Bob Hartley. No.
Yeah, it was.
He wakes up in bed with Mariette Hartley,
which was his wife in the other show.
No, it was. It wasn't Mariette Hartley.
Oh wait, no, it was Suzanne Plachette. So it was Bob Hartley.
Yes, I
got all my Hartleys mixed up.
Yeah, you got all your ears. So what happened was nobody knew Suzanne Plachette was going to be there. They turned the lights out in the studio and they snuck her in, and she was under the covers in the bed. And as soon as he says Emily, and the place started to like, what's happening? And then the light goes on and you see her. What is it, Bob? I mean, the place, it was like, talk about, wrestling pop. This was probably like one of the greatest pops in a sitcom crowd reaction you'll ever hear, because it was unknown to anyone, and it was genius, simply genius, that they have a character on a show, wake up in his old show, and that it turned out to be a dream. Now, it's not a cop out like St. Elsewhere's was, but I bought into it. So
it was one of the most genius. And I need to find the thesaurus for next time, because I keep using genius. But
Brilliant.
How else can you describe it? I mean, it was unexpected. It was well executed, and it was just perfect ending to the show. Yeah. Perfect ending.
And who knows if they could pull that off today? With the internet and leaks and everything like that, nobody knew. Nobody knew. Not even the studio audience knew at the time.
Yeah,
Thank God for non-disclosure agreements. All right, so that's going to wrap up our 80s sitcoms, Mount Rushmores. But when we come back, we're going to talk about the 80s dramas on the other side of the coin with Mike Cook and Chico Alexander. I am Andy Atherton. Stick around. Making Mount Rushmore will be right back. All right, PlayStation Pop Experience. We're back. We talked 80s sitcoms. Now we're going to talk about 80s TV dramas, and there were so many great ones, so many to pick from. Let's see what our panelists went with their Mount Rushmores, and we're going to start this time with Mike Cook. Mike, what is your first entry on your Mount Rushmore of 80s TV dramas?
I picked one that could have gone either way, to the comedies or the dramas. It's not necessarily a sitcom, but it dealt with a lot of things, mainly with the Korean War. And this was my grandfather's favorite show. So this is more of a shout out for my grandfather. And he was in the Korean War, and this is the only thing he ever watched. He never watched specials. He never watched anything. He only watched this show, and it's MASH. It had a lot of great funny moments. I mean, and that's why I wouldn't consider it like a situational comedy, just because of how serious. It also had so many more serious moments. I mean, to this day, it's still one of the most watched shows of all time. The finale. If you watched the last few episodes of it, it was just amazing. On the story of them finally leaving and everything, but the characters, another we talked about during the comedy, the ensemble cast, the spinoff from a movie, but I think Alan Alda was perfect. He had the comedic timing, and then he can also show the drama, all the scenes inside the surgical rooms, and it didn't even, when characters changed, it didn't impact the show at all, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, granted, Frank Burns was the all-time Tool, but Winchester was great too. And what other kind of show, now that Fox is owned by Disney, that Klinger can be a Disney princess at this point? But
that's true.
I just love the show. I mean, everything that they dealt with. and if you go back, go on IMDb and look at all the guest appearances that are on there, and it's just a who's who. And it's just, to me, it was just a perfect show.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would probably put it under the sitcom thing, and to me, it's also more of a '70s show. Just my personal opinion, but yeah, you can't deny classic. Another show I didn't watch at the time, but I appreciate it. That episode, I think it was called Abyssinia Harry. I think it's called, when they kill off McLean Stevenson's character, and they didn't tell the actors what. Only Gary Birdhoff knew that they were killing the character off. So when he delivered the line about Colonel Henry Blake's plane going down in the ocean, the Sea of Japan, like, he was the only one that knew. That was genuine emotion that they killed the character off, and that was their reaction to it. So again, more brilliance in the time. Chico, any thoughts on MASH?
Just everything that's been said. I mean, it's one of those shows that could go either way. I mean, yes, it has its moments, and yes, technically it's a sitcom, but it's almost a dramatic sitcom.
Yeah.
Thing of it is, it doesn't really pull any punches. It's one of those shows that just absolutely demonstrates the horrors of war as it's never been illustrated on television before. I mean, a show that aired at the same time, I want to say, was Hogan's Heroes, and where you had World War II being played up for laughs. Here's the Korean War, and yes, there's incredible humor to be had, but there's also some real touching, tender drama there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Chico, why don't you give us your first entry?
Okay. Honorable mention. I have to get this out of the way. It's only an honorable mention because when I made this list, I didn't even think about it. Which is weird because I watch this show all the damn time. I could tell you what happened where, and there are numerous times in my house where I've been known to say, "Oh, Jesus, another Dr. Pulaski episode." So, yeah, my honorable mention would be Star Trek The Next Generation, because, again, Star Trek was just imagination fuel, and this was the Star Trek that I grew up watching and the one that I most relate to. And I'm looking back at the original as well. This one had more gravitas, and that could be sort of credited to the cast.
All right.
But my first actually, can I go ahead and make that my first? Because I had an entry. I could easily get rid of that entry and sub out Star Trek The Next Generation for my first. There you go.
That's fine. We could pivot on this show. We're okay. It's okay to call an audible.
Yeah, I had to. Because, again, yes, it's a science fiction show, but it also blends gravitas, and it is the next human adventure.
Yeah, I could see that. I didn't watch it personally. I had friends in college that watched it. Probably the later seasons, because I started college in 1990, so I'm assuming it was probably on for a year or two. It started in the 80s, like the late 80s, right?
1986, I believe.
Wow. Okay, so
86, 87.
Yeah, it was on for that long. All right. Yeah. So from the snippets I've saw, I think it's a good show. So I could see where somebody would put that on there. Mike, any thoughts on Star Trek Next Generation?
I never watched it that much, but it was a groundbreaking show for the time. I mean, you got some great characters on there. One of my favorite characters, which was really weird, was Q. I don't know why, but I mean, and it brings you Picard. it to me, like, I had no idea who Patrick Stewart was until Picard. And from there, I really like his acting. I really like him. It was a different show. I mean, and if I'm right, this was the longest running of all the Star Trek series, right?
You are correct.
And up until that time, I hadn't seen any Star Wars or Star Trek movies until they did a couple with that crew. I know Whoopi Goldberg ended up being on it later on, but I can definitely see how this would make somebody's list.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to give an entry on Sean's list that didn't make anybody else's, and he had Dallas, which I did watch as a kid, didn't understand a lot of it, but had the greatest cliffhanger in the history of television, Who Shot JR, where the entire country was obsessed with that. It's all anybody talked about that entire summer. I mean, Larry Hagman went from being a beloved sitcom actor on I Dream of Jeannie, to being the most hated man on television. I mean, J.R. Ewing was such, pardon my French, such a dick. I mean, there's no other way to say it. He was ruthless. He had that laugh, that smile. You just knew there was something. The wheels were always turning on there. I mean, the Ewing family, had such great characters there. You had Bobby Ewing, with the whole, it was a dream sequence with his being killed off. You had what's it called, Linda Gray as Sue Ellen, as well as Victoria Principal and Charlene Tilton on the show. Yeah, lots of great character actors. And Dallas was the 80s again. Like we said, I talked about like Family Ties. Dallas was all about money and oil, and you saw just this ruthless family, and who the lengths they would go to, like, stab each other in the back or get one up on each other, or or hold something over their heads. It was so good. It was one of those shows that, like, I had to, like, beg my parents to stay up to watch. Chico, any thoughts on Dallas?
Only that I grew up watching the reruns on TNT, and holy cow, those were some vindictive little bastards, weren't they?
They were. You don't cross a Ewing. That's all I gotta say.
No, you do not. That's, you know what? You give me a choice. You cross a mafioso or you cross a Ewing. I would rather cross a mafioso.
That's funny. You'd rather cross Tony Soprano than J.R.
I'd
Ewing.
rather cross. Hey, yo, man, if I give me the choice between getting on Tony Soprano's bad side and J.R. Ewing's bad side, I'd be like, yo, man, I'm gonna stay away from Dallas for a while. I'm gonna go up to Jersey.
Mike, any thoughts on Dallas?
I have never seen one episode, but it did make my honorable mention, just out of for the honor. I know how big of a hit it was, and I do remember the TV guide. The TV guide, it probably made Who Shot JR 3 or 4 times, on the TV guide, after it happened, and then in the middle, the world is waiting. And it was just so huge. And think of how many different shows after that, Perry did parodies of it. And people also remember the scene where Bobby's in the shower.
Yep. And it turned out all to be a dream. Cop out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it just, if you were an 80s kid, that was in the lexicon, Who Shot JR.
Mm-hmm.
So I put it on my honorable mention along with another show, Dynasty. Again, never seen a single episode, but just because of how big they were in the 80s, those were your 2 big 80s dramas, probably for adults.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Of course, the third one being Falcon Crest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those shows too that's not streaming. One of the few shows not streaming anywhere. Very upsetting to our good friend Tim Capel. He is dying to rewatch some Dallas or watch, whether for a pod or not. All All right. So, Mike, give us another entry on your list.
All right, so a big entry on my list. If you're an 80s kid, and then after Sunday football, if you don't know these lines, in 1972, a crack commando unit was sent to prison by a military court for a crime they didn't commit. These men promptly escaped from a maximum security stockade to the Los Angeles underground. Today, still wanted by the government, they survive as soldiers of fortune. The A-Team.
If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the A-Team.
There you go. I mean, Mr. T, Dirk Benedict, George Papard, Dwight Schultz, those were your guys. They were the A-Team.
Oh, definitely.
I absolutely love that show. It was, every Sunday night for football. And then along with another show we'll talk about later. But, they're Robert Vaughn as Colonel Stockwell, their arch enemy. I mean, what 80s boy didn't like the A-Team? B.A. Baracus was the man, and
He's not getting on no plane.
Yeah, and them always tricking Murdoch. It was just. You look at it today, and I don't know how well it holds up, but for the 80s and being a boy growing up, you never missed it, especially when it was following football.
Indeed.
Yep. Chico, you had it as well?
Yeah, I did have it. Part of it was just, the whole imagination. Yes, it's hard to believe that, they could improvise a solution like that, but they did. They improvised a solution.
Yeah, and Mr. T was also on top of the world because, he coming off Rocky III, an appearance on Silver Spoons, his cartoon, everything. Yeah, he was just everywhere at the time.
Definitely.
Yeah, we all, playing 18 with your friends, you fought over who got to play who. They always made me play Face. I always wanted to be Murdoch. He was more fun.
Yeah, I ended up playing BA for obvious reasons, so.
But listen to this. I was just looking at these are some of the guest stars, and you would never think of it. That was on the show at one point. You have Liam Neeson, Bradley Cooper, Boy George, Hulk Hogan, Jessica Biel as when she was a kid, Pat Sajak, Isaac Hayes. It was just one of those shows that anyone that could be on it.
Yeah. Sean had on his list. It would have made my list as well. It was just so great. The whole BA is his toughest guy on there, but he's afraid of flies, so they would lace his milk with sleeping pills. His going back and forth with Murdoch. Hannibal with the cigar in his mouth, and I love it when a plan comes together. Yeah, just again, 80s kids, boys. A-Team was life to us. All right, so we are back to Chico. Chico, give us another entry.
All right, so my third entry is just because I also had the A-Team, but my third entry is just imagine, yes, it's supposed to be a very serious, it has supposed to have a lot of gravitas to it. It's supposed to be very serious. It's supposed to be this high medical drama. But it also has parts where you have absolutely no idea what the hell's going on. And you want to talk about wham endings. And in fact, not to toot some horns, but Greg put up the remaster of the episode involving Tommy Westfall. My third entry is Saint Elsewhere, which is just, it blends high drama, medical science, and the occasional whimsical case. So it had everything for a 6 or 7 year old Chico.
There you go. Mike, it was one of your honorable mentions. Are you muted, Mike? Yes, you are.
Sorry about that. It was one of those shows that I never watched. I put it on my honorable mention just again to honor it. I wasn't a big drama guy after 10 p.m. I mean, in the 80s, it's still fairly young, but I've heard such a great things about it up until the last season. But I had to give it its just due.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't watch it either. I mean, but just look at the cast. I mean, you had William Daniels, Ed Begley Jr., Howie Mandel, Stephen Furst. I mean, it was definitely show had a pedigree, and it was so popular at the time. It was one of the top medical dramas on TV, but it just was something that didn't appeal to me back then. I mean, I don't know if I'd ever go back and watch it on streaming, but it definitely deserves a place. All right, so back to Sean's list. I'm going to go with and another show that would have made mine as well, Magnum P.I. Just one of those great openings with, was this Stephen J. Cannell? I know Chico probably could correct me if I'm wrong on that. But
no, I don't think it was Stephen J. Cannell. I believe it was Donald P. Belisario.
Okay, yeah, he was one of the other ones. So yeah, it was that I think it was but it was it a Mike Post theme song now?
Yes, it was a Mike Post theme song.
Yes, Mike Post, who a lot of the great '80s theme songs were done under him. Just with the helicopter, the vet, or was it a vet he drove? The dogs. I mean, the guy was, set in Hawaii, which you didn't see any shows outside of Hawaii Five-0 ever set in Hawaii back then. You had Rick and TC. You had John Hillerman. I forget the character's name.
Higgins.
Yeah. It's just it was Tom Selleck, so charismatic. With that mustache and yeah, it was just the loud shirts. It was just everything. Just worked. It did. You put it on paper like, no, this doesn't make sense. But then the way the show just played out and everything, he was just so great. Mike, it made your list as well.
A great show. That was one of the ones I watched on syndication afterwards. I mean, that smile by that Tom Selleck has, my wife absolutely loves, and she loves it to this day on Blue Bloods, but that's a whole nother story. But they played off each other well, all the characters. They each had their role. It was just a different type of show, and it was one of those dramas that, unlike MASH, it had where MASH had more comedy to it. These are just like one-liners that were pretty good. The contrast between Higgins and Magnum going back and forth was great. And even it's one of those shows that was remade. Now I know some people don't like it. I've watched every episode, and I think it does it justice. But I mean, that's part of also one of the reasons that it made my list. Just because it was that good, it was be able to remake, and the remake it can still stand.
Yeah. All right, Chico, any thoughts on Magnum P.I.?
I just thought it was a really solid, really it sticks with you. Mm-hmm. And the thing of it is, you don't even realize how deep the story goes until later on in its run. All you see are hot cars, helicopters, and detectives wearing Detroit Tiger hats.
yes.
And that's all you remember. But it's the more you watch it, the more you realize, hey, there's some actual stuff going on here. I should be paying more attention to this.
Yeah. All right. Cool. All right, Mike, finish off your list.
We're gonna go back to Sunday nights on NBC. Yeah. Not only did you have the A-Team, you had another show that every guy watched, and maybe not launched the career of somebody big at Star, but he became a household name, in the 2000s. But another one of those where the show started off with a narration, Knight Rider, a shadowy flight into a dangerous world of man who does not exist. Michael Knight, a young loner on a crusade to champion the cause of the innocent, the helpless, and the powerless in the world of criminals who operate above the law. And of course, starring the Hoff, David Hasselhoff, and Kit. I can't tell you any of the other characters. Really. I think there was April, but who cares? This whole star of the show was the Hoff and the car, Kit. Again, it either followed A-Team or it was before A-Team. I think they swapped back and forth, through a couple Sundays, but it was one of those things after NBC was it for me after, after football. This was before Fox and all that. It was NBC football, then A-Team and Knight Rider.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had the great William Daniels as the voice of Kit.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you had the evil Kit Carr that showed up.
And then Michael Knight.
Yeah. Just whip a goatee on him. Just like they made Spock the evil Spock on Star Trek. Chico, any thoughts on Knight Rider?
Oh, Knight Rider is another one of those things that was growing up. That's one of my honorable mentions. I thought, you know what 80s kid did not have the Kit car, either the little Hot Wheels or the radio controlled one. I had both. So this was just really, they tried to bring it into the here and now, and it just did not work. I think this is one of those shows that's a time capsule.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have the Hot Wheels kit and car with the the line they've been doing for a number of years now, which I have them. I miss them because it's on my desk in my office, which I haven't been to in a year and a half. But I have about 50 cars from movies and television, and those are two of my my signature ones. All right,
Kit and car, even though they're the same, they're basically the same car.
Yes, except for one was bad and one was good.
Yes.
I mean, come on. What, I don't understand what the issue is. All right, so Chico, finish off your list.
All right, but finishing off my list with something that was, you want to talk about quintessential 80s. You have a police procedural, and at the same time you have rock and roll, the glamour and the glitz of South Florida, and that Jan Hammer theme music. It's got to be Miami Vice. I mean, yes, it's got that, police procedural, tale as old as time, but to drag in the littles, as it were, you have these hip cops with this hip outfit they got going on. You got the blazers, the tank tops, shoes with no socks on them, and then you have then you have this crack unit of undercover Vice Squad members who are helping them out, but these guys are just, they just took the 80s ball and ran with it. I mean, I still remember Sheena Easton playing Don Johnson's wife just so she can get murdered.
That's right. Yeah, again, another 80s time capsule. I mean, love that what they did in The Wedding Singer when they had Glenn obsessed with it. Glenn, wedding's Friday night. What are you going to do about Miami Vice? Summer reruns. I mean, he had the theme playing in his DeLorean when he picked up, Julia at the club. Yeah, Miami Vice is so typical 80s. It just excess, beautiful people in a beautiful setting. That's really all we really wanted. We wanted hot, handsome, and attractive people in warm weather settings, and that typified the 80s for us. With dramas.
That was it's like hot cars, beautiful people, the Miami sunshine,
the boats, everything. Yeah, you had the
boats,
highlight and Greyhound racing,
people with guns.
And Coke was the big drug of the 80s. and where did a lot of the DEA and all that stuff stuff was coming in, one our biggest southernmost major city, so
Mhm.
definitely had a lot to play off of there from the real world. Mike, any thoughts on Miami Vice?
Well, I thought that Colin Farrell and Jamie Foxx. Oh wait, the show, not the movie.
Yeah.
The bad movie.
The movie was okay.
It was on past my bedtime. Don't forget, Andy, you're slightly old, not much, but you were in high school when this show was on. I was still in middle school. So again, it wasn't one of those shows that I watched. I mean, a lot of these shows we're mentioning, maybe today I would go back and rewatch them. But it just wasn't anything, for me earlier on, younger. But I did make my honorable mention again to pay honor, because if you had if you had a song out and it wasn't on that show, unless you're Michael Jackson, it wasn't a hit. I mean, I know that Miami Vice had one of the all-time best soundtrack for TV, probably in the history of TV. And I got to give it its due, and that's why, it made my honorable mention.
All right, cool. Speaking of honorable mentions, Chico, do you have any ones that we haven't talked about?
I do actually, and it's sort of one of those shows that flies under the radar, but again, as evidenced by the movie version, it still holds a place in people's heart, and that would be, you want to talk about a Stephen J. Cannell joint, 21 Jump Street.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. Spawned some really funny movies, but
and also launched a lot of careers, namely Holly Robinson's and some guy. He plays a pirate now. I don't remember his name.
Dom DeLuise's son?
Yeah, that guy. No.
Dustin Gwynn?
Yeah, that guy. No.
Don't call me Sport. I hate when people call me Sport. No, and Richard Grieco too. He really took off. No, yeah, I see that. 21 Jump Street was early. It was Fox, right?
Yes.
Early Fox drama.
Sunday Night Fox.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Anything else on your list, Chico?
Yeah, that's pretty much all I can remember. Yeah.
Okay. Mike.
I have three. Another one of those shows that I never watched, but I have to give it its due is Hill Street Blues.
Previously on Hill Street Blues.
Never seen any of it, but it was, a huge cop show, and from everything that I've heard, it was ahead of its time. Again, another one of those ensemble casts. And I have no idea. I'd never seen one episode. But again, one of those classic, 80s dramas that you hear about. And then two others that I did watch. One, which you could go, it was supposed to be a drama, but it probably turned more into comedy, is Moonlighting, Sybil Shepherd, and another one of those guys that launched a career, a guy named Bruce something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Something Willis?
Yeah, something like that. And it turned into a comedy. I think, they went that way. Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis, their chemistry was great for that show. And it was a detective agent, and it was just funny. Another show that I have on there that I absolutely loved, an ABC staple, and if anyone, again, our age, you had to watch it because it was on right before Monday Night Football, MacGyver.
Oh yeah, became a big deal. MacGyver that shit.
Yeah.
How the guy, give me some twine, a nail clipper, and a Phillips head screwdriver, and I'll build you a semi-automatic rifle.
For 5 years, it was the lead into Monday Night Football.
Oh yeah, it was a guy, because it was a guy show. That's why it was all about, this guy trying to figure out his way out of these spots. It was great. So Sean had Knight Rider, Dynasty, and Quantum Leap as his honorable mentions.
There's another good one.
Oh, that is so awesome.
Yeah, I never got into Quantum Leap, but everybody who did talks about it, how passionately and how great it was. So I don't know if you guys could expound on it at all or more.
They were going to reboot it until he got the part for NCIS. But it was a good show. I mean, it was just basically, about him bouncing, to make things right. He bounced through time and all that, and it did have some great episodes.
Yeah, well, that's one of those narrations that you never forget. And so Dr. Sam Beckett leaps from life to life, putting right what once went wrong, and hoping with each moment that the next leap will be the leap home.
With Squeak.
All right.
Spoiler alert, he never makes it.
All right, very good. So before we go, let's talk about what pods we have, what social media presence you want to direct people to. Chico, do you have anything you want to direct people to listen to or check out?
Yes. It was a thing on TV.com. We have new episodes every Monday and Thursday. We just dropped Domestic Life this Monday. There's going to be, there was a mini-sode we did over the weekend where Greg and I were talking about the McDLT commercial with Jason Alexander and a false ending.
The hot stays hot, the cold stays cold.
Hot stays hot, the cold stays cold, and the cheese stays solid. Why isn't this melting?
Yes.
And of course, we do weekly drops at Place to Be Nation Pop over at y'all's site, and every month is Into the Spidey Movieverse. I believe coming in September is Spider-Man Homecoming. Yes. Spider-Man Homecoming coming in September.
All right, very good. Mike, you have anything to direct people to?
Well, me and Grooney, we explore Extreme Resurrection back in the days of WWE ECW. We're just getting to parts where it's actually starting to get a little interesting. We're late into 2006. Also, by the time this airs, we've already had 1 or 2 weeks of our NFL Pick'em. $10 for the year, and if you want to join, just hit up JT. And we can get you in. And same thing with the WWE Pick'em. I mean, even though it's getting toward the end of the year, it's been a lot of fun. It's been making a little bit more for the pay-per-views interesting. So if you're interested in getting in that, hit up Roger, hit up the Cowboy, and that's about it.
All right, very good. So check me out here. This is my primary home, PlayStation Pop Experience. I have the most sensational, inspirational, celebrational, Muppetational podcast that comes monthly, and myself and Miranda talking about the Muppet Show, as well as Pop Goes the Classics Disney. That is myself, Steve Riddle, and Miranda, where each month we go over a classic Disney animated feature. We are up to the next episode you will hear, I believe will be The Rescuers, so check that out. I believe that's dropping later this week, as well as new episodes of Great Debate, Laughing Theater, Blockbuster Rewatch, all coming very soon. Check me out on Stream Lounge. I will be doing many more streams up there. I'm continuing my MCU rewatch. Those will all be released as pods later, but if you want to join myself and a guest and actually watch along with us, you can do it live, or you can do it later on, and they archive everything, so check that out. That is on Stream Lounge, so go check out that site and that very great platform that is emerging. On the Wrestling Network, check me out on the sister version of this show, that is the Making Mount Rushmore Wrestling Edition, as well as Evolution and Great Debate Wrestling. I'm going to check out all the other great feeds in the quad of pods. That is the Jenny Position, Jennifer Smith's great feed with great shows like you heard about Pluto, Talking Pop, Tokes, and the Journey Through Infinity. Also the North-South Connection podcast feed with great shows in the worlds of wrestling and pop culture. And check out PlayStation.com. We have lots of great articles. All the podcasts are featured there. Also, before we say goodnight tonight, I have a little bit of an announcement as it concerns the show that I will not be the primary moderator going forward after this episode. I have handed the reins over to Mr. Steve Riddle. He has been on the show more times than anybody else and has really earned his chance to take the show, and it will be going down to a monthly show under Steve. So keep a listen out for that. We're going to have a lot of the same panelists coming in, but Steve will be driving the ship, and I know he's just going to do great. So I will continue to support. I may show up as a panelist on a future episode, but I think I'm leaving this version of Making Mount Rushmore in good hands. So for Chico Alexander and Michael Cook, I am Andy Atherton. Thank you for joining us on Making Mount Rushmore here on the PlayStation Pop Experience, and we'll check you out next episode. Take care, everybody.